So guys, Local Champion here. So Yun Tal is a viable item right now. Most of the people would associate it to Yone, yeah. So those are definitely reasonably good champions to use Yun Tal on, but people are underrating first item Yun Tal into a row on Hurricanes on a Hurricane user, such as Jinx as an example. So if there is a single target like this target dummy, we can see that we are slowly ramping it up, you know, and it lasts 4 seconds, right? Now it went down to 23 seconds. Cooldown from 40 during the duration of this bonus attack speed. So the more it ramps the crit itself up on the item, the more likely you're gonna reset the passive, and again, the more attack speed you have, the more likely you can reset the flurry as well, which just means that the attack speed itself helps itself to reset itself. It makes sense. Now, if I were to like use my Q with Renounce Hurricane, by the way, just don't, even if you hit multiple champions with your Q rockets without Hurricane, it's just still gonna give 1 stack of resets. So. But watch out on this one. Whoa, it just resetted. Now, a cool trick I can show it to you guys. So when it resets, it's really good, but what you can do to utilize is you can actually, if they split up, because obviously logically people will not stick together perma, once they split up a little bit more, so your minigun will give you 130% attack speed, which is really good, by the way, with the half of lethal tempo, because obviously like you're gonna deal insane amount of damage. Like you can see that this does insane amount of one hit. Then you can also reset your Yun Tal a bit faster when people split up, so aim to like switching between Qs as normally. Now let's jump to another example such as Twitch. Here is Twitch, another reasonable example with Yun Tal. So for now I will just not even use my art because I don't necessarily have to reset Yun Tal, but we can see approximately the same amount of duration that it will give you like a 17 less seconds on a single target once you all in. But when it comes down to team fight scenarios, say per moment, like you're gonna fight multiple champs and you go in for a really good infiltration, you'll find out that you can actually reset your Yun Tal multiple times actually, not only once, properly. So for example, watch out on this one. So you wanna initiate as Twitch. Look at my Yun Tal. Look at my Yun Tal, guys. How nicely it resets. Hoppa. That lasted so much. That lasted so goddamn much. That lasted so, and note that I wasn't even full crit. So with both builds, I wasn't even full crit. If you would be full crit, then it just basically would mean that the whole thing would be just smoother. It would be just even better. Now let's jump to the other examples, such as Zeri. Another good example, Zeri. Now notably that excess attack speed over 1.5 will convert into 80. So because if you stack completely lethal tempo and you have Yun Tal on, you actually get 30 extra 80. So that's actually quite notable. And just look at this, guys. So this is you know, that is probably like slower than the other champions, notably at obviously like resetting it of a single targeted enemy champion. Even with your E will not necessarily help unless there are like multiple targets. But let's say like one time I will not use my E, one time I will use my E, and we can see like it broke it, and we can see that we need to position a bit better, but you guys can see if we position well, we get the Renounce Hurricane off them, and if it does split right. So in here on Zeri, it's a bit more of a necessity for you to ramp up that this item completely to the 25% crit, because you are a little bit slower at resetting than others, so you kinda rely on it when it comes down to your just to your Q spam. So on other examples I showed it to you guys when it's not completely stacked, but by the time you have Hurricane on most of the champions you will have it stacked, if not all. But if I use my E, look at this, guys. I think I need to AE with the enemy champion actually too. Yeah, actually I kinda messed it up, so you need to kinda like AE with them as well, huh? So let me just try it again. So if I get a good AoE, that doesn't even touch the enemy champion. But if it does, then it hurts. So it does reset it more smoothly, huh? It just has to go through multiple. Yep, there is some smoothness there, honestly. And Yuri also like resets super nicely. I think Hurricane helped a little bit. Maybe not, maybe not. But this is like another great example where you couldn't get it. But on some champs you wouldn't necessarily get, by the way, just as it is on some champs, you don't necessarily want to go Hurricane second. You could go a good IE as well into something, which can be fine as well, or other items. Like, you don't have to get it on every single range champ as a second item Hurricane. You could get IE if you are ready enough, or something else depending on the enemy comp. So you could go Yun Tal, but not necessarily with the combination of Hurricane. Now, second item, obviously later on you could get it. Now let's jump to melee champs like Yone and Yasuo. Now Yun Tal and Yone is interesting as well, but it's a bit tricky because you do actually like so for example, your Q helps you to stack it same as your basics, which is seen to be a good thing, and it's overall a good item. It's also cheaper than your two first item options, the generic ones, Bork and Kraken. But here's the but, guys. So you could, I'm thinking like you could theoretically rush the item, just the components are not the best over boots, but it may depend on the matchup. Because once you have this spike, now for example, if it level 9, for example, if I rush this item and I don't get boots, we can see the attack speed I get from the item is 25%, the same amount I get from boots. It does provide 50 AD crit, which is important, and 30% attack speed. So as a ward where you obviously, like, even if you go Kraken or Bork, sometimes you just want to rush the entire item with elite champs. And as a good example, you can see that this is how it functions at level 9. So you can actually maximize out your Q and W cooldown insanely quickly with the activatable. But ideally, I would say like it's ideal to also like have some Q stacks before you all in, obviously, if a champion or something. But it also increases by a nice amount your lethal damage because you're a melee champ, so you get a bit more value. So for example, now it's 36.2, and now it's 40p. So there is like a decent amount of damage. And because you will be able to actually ramp it up very nicely, so it's a stronger item on your own once you have your levels. Once you have some levels, once you have some crit on it. So once you stack up the crit very quickly, then you'll be able to. It doesn't automatically attack, but you will be able to. Wait, let me just turn on auto attack for a second to show it to you guys. I think this will be my ultimate hack here. So the champion doesn't attack it for some. Or does it? 28. It looks like it's not attacking it. But basically, once you stack it completely, you're gonna get 50% HP with attack speed. So it's all about, I think the trick is, if you get it earlier, you stack the crit up earlier, you get a nice amount of attack speed just to like have that, you know, have that Q completely, basically like on the minimum amount of cooldown that's possible, you know. Reducing the cooldown itself, which is really nice. So overall, I would say like Yun Tal, because it provides such a nice amount of stats once you stack it up. It's a little bit also like sort of scaling oriented, but it provides a nice early spike as well. It will be very strong on your own once you ramp up the crit, because then you will be able to reset the item way faster. You'll be able to basically to deal a lot of damage, I would say, at this point. Now you're kind of like more likely to all in someone, because now you have a nice amount of attack speed, you have a nice amount of crit, you have a nice amount of damage. So it just really comes down to that on your own you rely a little bit more on stacking it as well. But even that attack speed and AD is just very nice, but notably it's worse than Kraken as an example until you stack the crit part. Now Yasuo, same logic applies to Yasuo. It can be viable on, but you gotta like stack it up. It's a worse, like it's cheaper than other alternatives, but it's worse than other items like Bork or Kraken until you stack it up, if it makes sense. But once you ramp it up, it's supposed to be better. just because like the crit damage on Yone got buffed, the crit damage on Yasuo's Q got buffed, and he got also 10% armor pen from his passive, which mainly applies to crits. So for example, if you have your Yun Tal, which is supposed to be a good item, for example, you get a good agility cloak. I mean, you're literally like so maximized out on crit. You're so nicely maximized out on crit already. Of like an agility cloak, of like a Yun Tal, that to the point where it deals so insane amount of damage in AOL and it's unreal. You get a Noon Quiver, you know, maybe if you wanna go a bit more defensive. But basically, like, you just have like so much, like your first 2 item spikes are even more scary right now with this addition of Yun Tal. Now that's it for now, guys. Have a nice